So Simmers, and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're actually doing another speed build for the Builders games. I always make sure to do a little explanation of the Builders games at the beginning of each video, so in case you've never heard of it before and this is the first video you're seeing of me doing something for the Builders games, you'll get actually a little bit of context. So the Builders games is a Sims competition that is hosted by Simmers for Simmers, and they have different seasons every 6 months or so. And every season has its own theme, and then there's like a bunch of people or a bunch of Sims builders that get invited to do the builds, and there's a bunch of people or Simmers that get invited to do the judging. And this season is season number 6, and the theme is desserts. And I've already done one build. The build of that is already up on my YouTube channel as well. And this season is kind of like an in-between shorter season. So it's only, quote unquote, only 4 weeks long. And every week we get a different shell challenge and a different little like prompt that we have to build with. And there's also no eliminations this season, so I also participated in the previous season where the theme was World Tour and we had to build something from different places in the world every week. And then we actually had eliminations, so every week one person would go home. But this season, no one is going home, and it's actually been really nice to build with still having scoring and still the potential of like winning the challenge, but not having that impending doom of, am I going home this week? Will I be able to continue building for the next week? So it's been really nice, and I've been really enjoying it. For this week, this is week 2 of season 6, and last week our first challenge was a mini shell, kind of like just one room, which we had to transform into our favorite pie. I picked a cherry pie, so if you want to check it out, the build is already on my YouTube channel. But like I said, this is the challenge for week 2. And we actually got 3 different shell challenges that all had different kind of sizes. So the first shell challenge only had the first layer of the shell. The second shell challenge had this, basically the one that I picked, so the 2 layers of the shell. And then there was also a third one which even had a smaller round room all the way at the top. And then we had to pick one of those 3 shells and transform it into our favorite cake. So I picked the one with the 2 layers because I felt like the one with the 1 layer wasn't really working for my vision, even though the cake that I picked kind of usually comes with just 1 layer. And also the 3 layers one, I didn't dare to touch that. I was too scared to go for 3 round rooms. I don't think I was ready for that mentally. But my favorite cake is a carrot cake. And I love the combination of like the nutty flavors in a carrot cake with the super sweet flavors of the frosting. For me, whenever I'm going out for like a little coffee or cake date with someone and they have carrot cake, I almost always have to get it. It is so good. I absolutely love it. There's a bunch of places where I live that also have phenomenal carrot cake, and that I'm so excited every year when it's like fall season and I get to eat a bunch of carrot cake. I know you can also eat it in other seasons. I know it's not like a limited thing to fall, but I just think it is so perfect for fall because of the flavor combination. So when I saw this challenge, I immediately knew that I wanted to go for a carrot cake. Also, I've been really obsessed with like brown and warm tones recently in interior design. So this build was like perfectly up my alley. It was a perfect match, and I was super stoked to get started. So my inspiration for the cake, obviously, since it's a carrot cake, we would be using a lot of warm interior and like a lot of warm colors. I wanted to make sure that the cake was gonna have a white frosting on the outside, because that at least is my typical carrot cake that I know. While building this on my Twitch stream, I actually learned that in some places in the world, the most typical frosting for a carrot cake is actually chocolate and not the white frosting. So if you're watching this video, I would love to hear, what is the typical frosting that you put, or like typical icing that you put on your carrot cake? Is it just maybe a Dutch thing that we use, a white icing? Is this like, what is it? I need to know. We need to do a little cultural research experiment here, and we need to understand what kind of icing people put on their carrot cake, because this is a very important question. And also, I'm very curious to now try carrot cake with different icings. But for me, I went for the white one because that's the one I know, and I wanted to make sure to decorate it a little bit, because obviously a carrot cake with just white icing is going to look a little bit bland and a little bit boring. So I googled carrot cakes and I found a bunch of carrot cakes that had like some decoration on it. So there were a couple that had like the little poofs of, I think it was kind of like a sugary paste or something with the little sugar carrots in it. And I think that looked really cute. So you actually saw me adding that in the beginning of the video at the top of the shell. And then I also wanted to do something with the decoration on the outside. And I actually found this one really pretty picture. I'll make sure to quickly put it up in the corner in the screen as well. But there was this one carrot cake that had like all of the kind of like green leaves and a little bit of orange flowers on it and stuff. And I thought that looked so beautiful and so cute. But then as soon as I had that vision in my brain, I realized that recreating that in The Sims might turn out to be a huge challenge. I think in the end I did well, but based on the judges' feedback, there were people who didn't really like it because they still thought that the outside looked relatively bland. To be fair, I didn't really know what else should have done because a carrot cake is simply not the most decorated cake on the outside. So I already tried to give it some pizzazz by like adding some decoration to it. But I fully understand that compared to some of the other builds that were submitted this week, that it wasn't necessarily like the most stunning or visually pleasing cake on the outside because, to be fair, a carrot cake just looks kind of boring on the outside. It's the inside where the magic happens. And that's also really what I tried to kind of convey with this cake is the outside was very like soft and very basic. And then the inside was where the magic happened. So you'll see that during the basically the floor plan and me decorating the inside as well. There were a couple of challenges with this build that I'd like to share with you because I think if you're seeing this, maybe because it looks a bit bland on the outside, it's not necessarily visible how much of a challenge this was. In the beginning of the video, you actually saw me put the whole thing on a cake stand. That took me forever. It was so hard to actually get it up there, get it on the right height. We switched lots multiple times to actually make it work. I didn't expect that to be such a huge challenge, but building in like a floating shell isn't necessarily the most easy in The Sims because obviously the game isn't really built for it. And somehow you'll see that when I post the speed build of week 4, because we're currently working on that as I'm recording this voiceover, I somehow make the mistake to go for another floating shell. So just a little heads up, keep an eye out for future videos in this series. There is 1 week in between where I didn't go for a floating shell, but then in week 4, I just make the same mistake all over again. And let me tell you, it's been a challenge, but I can also highly recommend it because it's been a lot of fun to really get creative with my building. I think at this point, this was the most creative build I've done. Again, week 4 is definitely a little bit more out there, so I highly recommend you keep an eye out for that. But something else that was a huge challenge with this was, I already kind of said it, but figuring out how to make a quote unquote boring cake not so boring. So we experimented a lot with like different additions, like different decorations to this build. And I think there were a lot of things that I liked, but I just all felt like they didn't really look like a carrot cake design. They all kind of made it look like a typical wedding cake. And even though I end up kind of pretending like this is my wedding cake, I, for some reason, just didn't really like, for instance, the garlands that you just saw me add. I didn't really like how that looked because it just didn't really give a carrot cake feeling. It just gave a simple, like maybe red velvety wedding cake feeling. And that was just not what I was going for. So I'm really curious to hear what you think of the outside decoration and whether you think I made a carrot cake look good. I'm, in the end, pretty happy with how the result turned out to be, but it was definitely a challenge. Something else was that it was a huge challenge actually to match the outside of the shell and kind of like the spring, light, fresh colors with the interior, which was obviously very like warm and orange and brown and very fall tinted. And just making sure that it still felt cohesive going from the outside of the shell to the inside was quite a challenge. I didn't expect that to be so hard, but it was just something that I didn't really anticipate would be a challenge with this specific cake because I've never thought about carrot cake as a house. Like I have never ever in my life, I don't know about you, but I don't casually go around thinking about cakes and how they would look like as Sims builds. So when I got confronted with the reality of actually a carrot cake is kind of two opposites in one cake, it's the very light and the very darker warm colors all together, and matching that to an interior was quite a challenge, but I think I did well. I think in the end, it kind of does translate also with having the orange carrots outside and which having the warmer flowers that you see me putting right now. I think that definitely helps in kind of translating that orange on the inside a little bit to the outside. Then something else which I feel like has been obvious, but maybe not, is the round walls. Obviously, we all know that round walls in The Sims are hella broken still, and the fact when I saw this shell, I almost cried a little bit because it is a fully round shell. There's like on the shell itself, there was no straight walls. All of them were round, and it's just a nightmare to build with, because if you actually make an interior floor plan, the interior walls are clipping on the outside. They clip through the round walls, which basically meant that we ended up opting for half walls as our main interior walls, because for some reason half walls don't clip, but full walls do clip, and they clip in like a way that it completely ruins the outside of the shell. So that was definitely a challenge to kind of tackle. I'm super grateful that one of the other builders in the builders games this season actually shared it in our chat, because she was like, bro, let me tell you, please use half walls, they don't clip. And I'm so glad, because it looked ridiculous with the full walls on the inside. The clipping was terrible. It completely messed off the roof trim. You can kind of see it here as well. You kind of see like the little gaps in the trim around the shell. It was terrible. It was like absolutely terrible. And here's where I'm actually trying to fix it for the round walls. And it made such a huge difference. And on the inside, the round walls actually don't look weird visually. So I think we're all good. Then the second thing, obviously, windows, doors, curtains, nothing really works on round walls. So realizing that I had to like figure that out and figure out what windows to use, even though it was already a challenge to use windows on a cake, because a cake doesn't have windows. So I really needed to try and figure out how I could kind of add the windows so that they would nicely blend into the cake design. That on its own was already a big challenge. And then figuring out like which windows to use on top of having it being round walls, it was just definitely a challenge. So Juby, the person who creates these shells, I think every single builder of this season has been telling her, what were you thinking? Why did you want to torture us so badly with all of the round walls? Because this is not the only shell that has round walls. I legit think 3 out of 4 shells for this season have round walls, and it's definitely pushing me out of my building comfort zone, but I think that's also good. I think that's also why I really like these challenges. Then lastly, I think one of the things that is also related to the round walls, which was a huge challenge, is obviously the decoration on the inside, because I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of decoration on my outside walls. This is a little trick that I kind of always do when I'm building, is I like to add my decoration on the outside walls, that if you end up playing in the build and you play with the walls half down, your decoration actually is visible because it's on the outside walls instead of your interior walls, which almost always go down when you play with the walls half up. So me trying to figure out the decoration, huge challenge, but I think I ended up doing a quite all right job. I just kind of have some paintings that technically aren't really fitting to the wall, but I hit them in a way that you don't really see it. So it's kind of like having to hide things with plants in The Sims. Ugly corner, just put a plant. Weird little bump out, just put a plant. Well, that's kind of what we did in this build, but then with paintings on the wall. We just hid some of the round walls and we just tried to make it work. Obviously, also figuring out a floor plan was quite a challenge, because if you want to put furniture again against a round wall, you have to kind of make sure that it makes sense spacing wise, and just having a huge round wall to work with in every single room was definitely something that I don't think I'll repeat for like fun for myself. But for this one challenge, I'm really glad that I got to push myself, because it does really kind of push you out of your comfort zone and gets you to a new creative level of building, which I also learned from, and then I can take that into future builds. So that was really nice. Also, something that you see here is we're decorating the table. So kind of what I really ended up with was the vision to actually just make it a wedding cake, because with the white frosting and the 2 layers, it already looked so much like a wedding cake that I kind of just embraced that concept. And I think in the end, I figured out my dream wedding cake, which was a coincidence that I didn't expect. It wasn't something that I was planning to find with a Sims build, but now that I know, I think I will actually have a carrot cake if I ever get married, because that is just so perfect and it's so delicious. And we also ended up adding my 2 cats as a topper, which just kind of fully finished the build as my wedding cake, because if I ever get married, I now want my cats as a topper. I am that cat lady. I want that. And I think honestly, I could convince my boyfriend to agree with this. But once we figured out that it was going to be a wedding theme, I just fully went with that theme, and I tried to decorate the shell around it as like a little wedding cake tasting with a nice table, like really incorporating that spring design, making sure there was some candles, some nice wine glasses. I think here the biggest struggle was finding cutlery that we could size up to a size that it still looked good, because we don't really have cutlery. We have a little bit of debug cutlery, but the quality of that, once you size it up, is actually terrifying. So I would never recommend sizing that up. I think we end up using a wooden spoon that looked a lot better once sized up. But the fact that this table is, I think we had to size up those plates like 4 or 5 times. So it also makes sense that obviously the game isn't built for you sizing up a small teeny tiny fork like 20 times. But I think it was fun that we eventually found something that worked. And also a hilarious note here is that the napkins we used is actually the Woohoo blanket from the new pack from Lovestruck. And I'm not gonna lie, I have used this in the next build for next week again as a napkin because it just works. For some reason, I'm obsessed with using the Woohoo blanket as a napkin. But if you think about it as a napkin and a Woohoo blanket, it's just really funny. The whole context of it, it's just really funny. It's like the number 69. You cannot not giggle when it comes up. It's just funny, okay? Let me know in the comments down below if you also think this is funny or if this is just me being a complete child. But anyways, if you want to download this build, it is up on my gallery. My gallery is just Rosannatxt. My username everywhere is Rosannatxt. So if you ever want to come hang out on Twitch while I do live building or live gameplay, or you want to follow me on my Instagram or my Twitter, my handle everywhere is just Rosannatxt, so you can always easily find me. And if you actually like this shell challenge and you would like to participate in shell challenges like this, you can actually get the shells from the Builders games of this season and all previous seasons through Jubisims' gallery. I'll make sure to link her gallery ID in the description box down below, as well as link to her channel because she also creates phenomenal Sims content. So then in kind of like, if you want to join in, even not as a formal participant, but you still like shell challenges and you would like to also participate and see what kind of cake you could make of this, feel free to check out her gallery and download the shells. They publish the actual challenge of the Builders games every week as we are working on the challenge on their Instagram. So if you're interested in the Builders games in general and you would like to see a bit more about like what they do, when the new season is coming up, when this season is closing, who is winning, etc., then you can always follow them on Instagram or join their Discord because that's where you can find all of the relevant information for those things. And then also, I would love to hear about your favorite cake in the comments because now I've told you guys about my favorite cake and being obsessed with carrot cake, but I'd love to hear what your favorite cake is and how you would have approached this build. So feel free to leave a little comment. And if you don't know what to comment, also just commenting your favorite emoji. It really does help a video get pushed to more people if people engage with it in the comments. So if you want to do that, thank you so much for wanting to take that time. And there is 2 more weeks upcoming. So if you want to see my future builds, I can already tell you the build for next week is going to be really cool. I'm extremely proud of that. So feel free to go check that out on my channel when it comes out. And if you're not subscribed and you don't want to miss that build, feel free to hit that subscribe button and notification bell because then you don't actually miss any of my future uploads. And then of course, as the end of my voiceover to every Builders Games video, I have to tell you guys about the scoring. So for this week, unfortunately, we didn't win, but that's completely valid because I saw some of the other builds and my, oh my, people are so ridiculously talented. So we actually ended up on a shared 3rd place and we got some good feedback from the judges. I think the main point is that compared to some of the other builds, they didn't necessarily love our interior or exterior design as much. Some people did like the most beautiful and stunning landscaping and the most beautiful and stunning designs on the outside. So I can see why the carrot cake being a little bit more bland did not really fit that theme, but I'm extremely happy with the 3rd place. That is a huge honor, and I can already tell you that you are gonna want to keep an eye out for next week, not just for the build, but also for the scoring. And then as I'm recording this voiceover, I'm actually working on the build for the finals, and I am super, super stoked. And of course, I will give the update on the scores for every week respectively as well. And I think that's everything that I'd like to share with you. If you enjoy my Sims building and you want to see more of my builds while you're waiting for the Builders games to come out, I do have a full playlist on my YouTube channel where I link all of my builds, including all the builds that I did for the previous season of the Builders games. And I think with all of that being said, I'm just gonna let you guys enjoy the last part of this speed build with some nice music. And of course, as always, there is screenshots of the build at the end of the video. So if you want to see all of the cute little detailed first-person view shots, feel free to go check out the end of the video as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone!